At the end of the day, every person wants to commit war crimes from time to time. But unfortunately, every time I launch several tons of toxic waste at developing nations and tribes, I just end up receiving angry emails, death threats, as well as several nukes launched at my apartment complex. For this reason, I have turned to other things to satisfy these dark urges, like Minecraft. But RimWorld is a close second. RimWorld is commonly known as a space-age war crime simulator. And honestly, I don't blame them. Some of the most batshit insane things that I've read have come from the r/RimWorld subreddit. And a lot of this is because of the numerous ways to play, as well as the great modulability of the game, allowing for endless amounts of colonies and stories to be told. I recently just hit 1600 hours in the game, after doing a full colony playthrough with the Sarg Bjornsson mod pack. And normally, that would tide my RimWorld cravings for a few months. But this time, I had a wild idea almost immediately afterwards. Could I survive in the haunted biome? Ooh. While I was doing the ending to that colony, I was shooting the shit with someone, and talking about the weird stuff that is included in the game Dwarf Fortress. In particular, the evil biomes. If you were unaware, in Dwarf Fortress, biomes are assigned a classification from an alignment chart ranging from good and evil and benign and savage. This modifier determines the animals, weather, threats, and difficulty of settling in said biome. Now, about half of all evil biomes will come along with the reanimating property, which means that all corpses in the area will revive after a certain amount of time, if the body isn't properly butchered, burned, beheaded, or mangled beyond belief. Now instantly, I was enamored by this idea, and wanted to see how I could apply this to a RimWorld game. And as it turns out, Ludowic Studios had already answered my prayers last year, with the release of the Anomaly DLC. Anomaly is not looked on favorably by a lot of the community, but I personally am a really big fan of everything it added to the game. Especially all of the new weather conditions and music that was added. Possibly my favorite event and the topic of today's challenge is the Death Pall. A black fog that reanimates the corpses of slain creatures on your map. Sound familiar? So after setting up a custom scenario in which the Death Pall would always be active, and downloading Det's Xenotypes Stoneboard mod, I was finally ready to start my new colony. We have arrived. After a long journey from the great mountain homes into the forbidding wilderness, our four dwarves' harsh trek has finally ended. With hardly any supplies left, stout labor will have to provide sustenance. But our hardy group shall make a glorious outpost for the honor of all of Mendaron. A new chapter begins here, at this place, Mountain Home, Jamestown. Strike the earth. Starting out, I had carefully curated my 4 starting dwarves, as well as my mod list, and hit randomize on my starting location. This was actually my second attempt at doing this challenge, because in my first one, everyone had died almost immediately, because I had forgotten to bring a colonist who had more than 0 plant skills. This time, however, I had forgotten to bring a pawn who was proficient at mining, but that was hardly an issue for these hardy dwarves of mine. Very quickly, they carved out a space in a nearby mountain, and set up living quarters, as well as a space to grow the nutritious fungus that would be the main lifeline for this colony. Also, I really hope you enjoyed that little bit of sunlight we had at the very beginning, as the rest of the playthrough ended up looking like the Fallout 3 subway tunnels. Expecting my first raid soon, I set up an enclosed corpse stockpile and a 3-wide rock barrier to hopefully slow down any enemies trying to attack this growing fortress. I gotta admit though, there was a bit of a learning curve in learning how fast things would reanimate, and ultimately, I started to run low on medicine pretty quickly, due to how often my colonists were getting injured by the reanimated animals around the map. The other issue I was experiencing right at the beginning was food. I couldn't hunt because the animals that I killed would turn on the walk back. And foraging for food was a bit dangerous due to the reanimated animals. Unfortunately, because of this, I ultimately had to slaughter and eat my 2 donkeys, as well as the corgi, Madam, which we had arrived with. Starvation was still prevalent though, and I was scrambling to find food to hold them over until that first harvest. Eventually, there was only beer to tide them over. But that was enough for that first harvest to come, and for the colony to have a consistent, sustainable food source. Work continued in full force on the fortress, and slowly but surely, the base was taking shape. Nothing much happened until the dead of winter, when the colony was contacted by a medieval sailor. Ardil, Mulfoy's daughter, had left the home fortress just as her dad did, to follow in his footsteps to join the growing outpost her dad had helped found. The rest of the fortress welcomed her with open arms, and quickly, she proved her worth as a group of domesticated ducks wandered in after her. Not long after Ardil's arrival, another visitor had come, but this one was a little less voluntary. A transport pod had left a sickly hermit stranded in our hellish environment. Surely, she would die, if we didn't help her. After nursing her back to health, she thanked them and joined the colony. Bacchus was actually a great help to the colony, since I could have her focus on making the stone bricks that would be needed to set up defenses and expand the base. She also made some incendiary launchers, so that I could start cleaning up all the skeletons that were in the corpse stockpile. After this was all said and done, this growing outpost was 6 strong now, and had no signs of slowing down. Here's where I made a small mistake. Now normally, in a RimWorld game, it's about this point where you start producing clothes, weapons, and expanding your base. But I had been neglecting to improve my defenses as well. Normally, I don't really even worry about defenses until I pass that wealth threshold that starts giving you normal raids instead of the tutorial raids. But I was already well past that point when I had realized that I had nothing set up yet. So quickly, I scrambled to set up a small murder hallway on either side of my base, just to give myself a little bit of leeway in case they sent a raid my way. And fortunately, I was able to get about half of one finished before I got raided by waster pirates. They were fairly easy to dispatch, but it didn't end there, as after the battle, the bodies quickly rose again to attack my base, meaning I had to essentially fend off the raid for a second time. This left about half of my fighters in a bad spot, as well as all of my defenses gone. Bacchus had caught the plague as well, making my medicine stores obscenely low. This probably would have turned out fine, but the very next day, I received another raid from the pigskins. Thanks, Randy. Unfortunately, with my attention split and the colony already in bad shape from the last raid, I just couldn't give Bacchus the care that she needed. Bacchus sadly passed away from the plague, meaning that I had just lost my best crafter. Farewell, Bacchus. Your time with us was short, but you will not be forgotten. On top of losing my best crafter, I had a whole heap of bodies that need to be processed before they would turn and attack the colony again. By this point, though, I had decided to throw human decency out the window, as I just started chopping up the people and eating them, or turning them into chem fuel. This biome turns people into inhuman monsters anyways, so I am technically giving them mercy by chopping them up. Despite the loss of a colonist, life goes on, construction continues, crops are tended, and the odd goat gets sacrificed here and there. Sacrificing the goat seemed to unsettle the air around the fortress, however, as a strange young man came beckoning at the front gates. Now, normally, I don't fuck around with creep joiners, as I really don't like having to deal with the STD known as metal horrors. But seeing as I had just lost Bacchus, I decided to say fuck it and let him in. Katsumi was already pretty useful, as he was able to psychically deconstruct people and turn them into a mound of twisted flesh. I figured I would just use him for a minute until he eventually turned on me, which, should happen any minute now. Huh. I guess I got lucky with this one, and Katsumi didn't have any downsides. So when I started this game, I made a custom ideology for my dwarves to follow. And on a whim, I took the human primacy meme. And whoa boy, do I think I have found one of my new favorite playstyles. Seriously. Previously, I had never paid attention to human primacy, as for some reason in my mind, I always thought it was connected to the body purist trait. But its only downside is that you're not allowed to bond with animals. In return, you get an amazing crafter/constructor who's capable of making legendary items without the need of an inspiration. It doesn't even prevent you from taming animals, or training them, like I thought it did. And honestly, I just feel really stupid for never picking this meme until now. After I turned one of my colonists into the production specialist, is when I really started having a lot of fun with this playthrough, as I just started to feel the superiority of dwarven steel. It was awful for my wealth, sure, but I started pumping and dumping masterwork and legendary weapons and armor left and right. All of my fighters were equipped with the best of the best, making them an elite death squad capable of ripping and tearing through raiders and bugs like the dwarves from Deep Rock. A lot of encounters started to become insanely trivial, as all I needed was a dwarf with a legendary chain shotgun, and another with a masterwork plasteel longsword. It was also around this time that I noticed a lot of shamblers were hanging around at the corners of the map, making it so that whenever I did get attacked, I was usually fighting the raids at half strength. This challenge was honestly a lot easier than I thought it would be. Would you believe that I made it this far into the game without a pawn with a decent social skill? Honestly, social isn't that necessary, but I normally love having a lot of pawns, so I tend to recruit a lot. So it was about damn time that I got a pawn who doesn't approach social situations like they're me talking to literally any gas station attendant. That time was now, as the colony had received a call from Anarchist. The professional anarchist. Mike, which is what I'll be calling him for the rest of the video, profaned a peace ritual, and now has 2 small groups of pirates coming after his ass. On a whim, I took him because I was amused by his name, and the reason he was calling. But upon arriving, he attracted many shamblers to my base on his walk up to my front door. I was worried this might be the end, because if the raiders attacked now, I would likely be overrun. Then I remembered what my current environment looks like, and instantly stopped being worried. One group came in and instantly got harassed by the shambler horde at the top of the map, and the other was very quickly killed by Arrow's legendary chain shotgun. I even got a mech cluster in the middle of this, but it was nothing a smoke launcher and 2 fighters couldn't handle. All this was extremely worth it, as Mike was a very good pawn with an alright medical and construction skill, and a very good social and melee skill. Life went on, and things stayed relatively peaceful in the colony. Mike adjusted well and became the new priest for the Ideologian. I started building a room for mortars to use just in case I started getting sieges. But almost immediately after building that room, a group of pigskins dropped into there to attack me. The idiots had locked themselves in there, so when my boys opened up the room, it very quickly turned into a blender. After everything was said and done, there was one lone pigskin incapacitated on the ground. A 15-year-old villager with an iron will named Sao. Being the charitable soul that I imprisoned her, and figured that I could maybe recruit her. But then, I noticed that she had a minor back injury in the form of a shattered spine. The last time I saw an injury this bad was just the other weekend, when I blew your mom's back out. Honestly, I probably should have just killed her and chopped her up, but I figured I'd keep her around so that she can give me blood. And then, when I boarded the ship, I would jettison her back to her pigskin colony and make her their problem. So, this is when the playthrough started to slow down a lot. Raids were practically a non-issue now due to the massive amount of shamblers corralled at the tops and bottoms of the map. Not only that, but a psychic droner ship had fallen. And normally for me, this is a destroy as soon as possible. But since everyone in my colony is psychically deaf, or a woman, this meant that only the raiders would be affected by the mental onslaught. This colony was beginning to feel more and more like a prison. So, I decided that this is when I should start packing it up and start working towards the end games. I stuck all my pawns close to the base and started strip mining the mountain for materials. Recruited a tough Yetican named Woshit, as well as another timeless one with the Dead Life Dust ability for the coming battles ahead, and prepped the defenses to handle the stronger raids that I would be receiving. Near the very end too, I even managed to procure a bionic spine from an orbital trader, which I installed into Sao, since the blood I was taking from her had actually saved a few of my colonists from bleeding out on several occasions. I figured I should pay her back for that. So, after a lot of off-screen grinding, the ship was finally built, and my colonists could get off this damn planet and explore the open stars. But first, a 15-day startup time was required. Hopefully, everyone could make it. If you've ever beaten RimWorld, you know that the endgame raids are intense. But I was feeling confident that everyone would make it off this planet safe and sound. I began the startup sequence and got ready. Now, this was actually the fastest I've ever completed a run of RimWorld. Normally, I'm at the maximum wealth threshold whenever I'm starting the endings. But this time, I was still in moderate expectations. At max wealth, the endgame raids require a large team of high-level construction pawns just to keep up with the sheer amount of destruction your colony will be facing. But at moderate expectations, I found that the raids were fairly manageable. Nothing my team of expertly trained pawns equipped with the finest gear couldn't handle. Raid after raid, siege after siege. I fended off all of the sacrifices lining at my front gates. And somehow, during all of this death and turmoil, Katsumi and Skulk formed a deeper connection. Honestly, I thought it was kinda cute, since they were both the youngest in the colony, as well as timeless ones. But, despite my preparations, I was slowly running out of materials, and the injuries on my pawns were mounting. By the end of day 12, I was almost completely out of steel. And by the end of day 13, almost all of the ammo was gone from my turrets. Things were getting bad, though I was certain my fighters could handle a few raids on their own. But after a group of Neanderthals drew a shambler horde to my base, 2 of my best fighters went down. If one more heavy raid came my way, I was 80% sure a colony wipe would occur. But I got lucky. The raiders backed off and I barred the doors to prevent the shamblers from coming in. As soon as that reactor was ready, I got everyone inside, except for 2. Molfoy had a mental break right before the reactor was ready, and wandered outside into the shambler horde. Wooshit, not ready to leave anyone behind, made a last-ditch effort to save him, and rushed ahead to fight off the shamblers to get him onto the ship. Wooshit was able to fend off the shamblers attacking, and despite a few close calls, everyone made it onto the ship alive. The reactor was primed and ready, and with no hesitation, the ship launched in search of a better home, and a brighter future for the people of Menderon. While mostly everyone was able to board the ship, we shall always remember the fallen who helped us get here. Rest in peace, Bacchus. Shall we meet again in another life? And that's it. With everyone gone, this humble fortress will likely fall to ruin. The laughter and chatter that once sounded proudly through the stone corridors will instead be replaced by phantom echoes, like rain on a quiet street. Perhaps one day, some travelers will happen upon this area and decide to return this fortress to its once simple glory. But, honestly, I think it's probably best to let the ghosts of this accursed biome have it. I love this fucking game, man, if you couldn't tell. And I would easily rank it in my top 10. So, once again, much like the very first video that I made on RimWorld, go play this game. It is amazing. And the DLCs are incredible too if you can afford them. And before I sign out, I'd like to give another really big thank you to KushiroJin, who once again made the thumbnail art for this video. I put some links in the description again if you want to commission her. But that's going to be all from me. Thanks for watching.